Hi everyone, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Lauren, and today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I am going to be asking all of you for your thoughts and opinions on which book I should read next for 5 different authors. In my last TBR Star Jar video, I pulled a few books by authors that I have read one book by them so far and was super excited. They included a book by Peter Clines, a book by Kaylee Wallace, and a book by Marie Lu. And I was so excited to pull each of those 3 books that it got me thinking, why do I not try harder to read another book by authors that I enjoy the first book? I'm not really the kind of reader who is looking for specific authors for books. I have a very small handful of them that I will buy a book if it's written by that author. I would like to kind of change that though. I'd like to find more authors that I know consistently put out work that I want to pick up and enjoy. So I compiled this list of 5 different authors whom I read and enjoyed their one novel by them and just have not moved on to a second one for whatever reason. So let's just jump right in and let me tell you about a couple of books that I'm interested in from these authors that maybe you can give me some thoughts on them. And I will say that you don't have to have read these books yourself even to give me your thoughts. If you have read these books, I mean, of course, I want to know if you loved them, if you hated them, if they're must-reads or like avoid at all cost type books. But I also, if you haven't read them, I'm also interested to know which of these just sounds more intriguing to you. So I'm really hoping that you will talk to me in the comments down below on your thoughts on any of these books and help me just kind of like pull the trigger on adding a second book of each of these authors onto my TBR. So the first author that I want to mention is Catherine Valente, who wrote The Past is Red. I just recently read this book. This was a book that I pulled for my July TBR, which I'm not going to go into great depth about this since I will be talking about it in my July wrap-up. But suffice it to say, I really enjoyed this book. I really liked this author's style of writing. I really want to pick up another book by this author. And there are 2 books by this author that I've read a little bit about and am really interested in both of them. So hopefully if you've read one of these, or even if you haven't read them, I hope that you will give me your thoughts on these 2 books about which one I should prioritize. The first book is Comfort Me with Apples. The Past is Red was more of a sci-fi, kind of a post-apocalyptic dystopian sci-fi, but Comfort Me with Apples, I believe, is more of kind of a thriller horror type of story. I think it's about a woman who marries kind of her dream guy and winds up in this really nice neighborhood that has other young married couples in it. But I think it also kind of has sort of a Stepford Wives vibe to it, like things seem perfect but aren't really, like kind of an unsettling vibe to it. The other book that I'm interested in by Catherine Valente is called Radiance, and this is a sci-fi fantasy. If you look this book up on Goodreads, it calls it Deco Punk Pulp Sci-Fi, which sounds, I don't know, that sounds amazing to me. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but it sounds amazing to me. I do love deco and punk and sci-fi, so mash it all together and that just, I don't know, that really like makes me really curious about this book. I know that it's kind of an alternate history type of book set in the 40s, but I think it is in this alternate past, we are capable of space travel. And the story follows a girl who, her father is a filmmaker. The filmmaker's daughter, she decides to set off on her own to create documentaries. And so she travels through the galaxy to different planets and meets different life forms and has these just kind of crazy experiences. It sounds like it is really kind of ethereal almost. And I know it's also told in almost a mixed media style. So like it'll have like magazine articles in it and radio blurbs and stuff like that. The idea of this book is so intriguing to me that I can't get it out of my head. Is this the book that I should prioritize over Comfort Me with Apples, or vice versa? Like which one, based on, if you know me, if you know my taste at all, but based on that, which one do you think that I would like better, or which one would you like better? I just need some input, any kind of input you have to offer. Next, we have Emily St. John Mandel, who I read Station 11 by this author and really enjoyed it. She has a very distinct style of writing, and it's almost kind of this literary style of writing. This book is actually a post-pandemic, post-apocalyptic type of story. It follows several different storylines and characters, which I think is kind of a signature thing for her. These books of hers that I'm also interested in reading, they have it's like the exact same style. Though this isn't a favorite of mine, this is a great book, and there is absolutely no reason that I shouldn't pick up another book by this author, just judging by how much I enjoyed her writing. One of the books that I am interested in possibly picking up by her is The Glass Hotel. I think it's kind of a mashup between contemporary and mystery genres. It's also told in sort of these parallel storylines. I think one of them follows the situation with a Ponzi scheme that causes some sort of financial collapse. I don't know if it's like in the country or what. And then the other storyline is, I think it follows this situation where a woman is kind of disappears. So sort of this mystery element to it. It has some really interesting themes that I know it explores, including guilt and love and greed. Under the book description says it has a lot to do with sort of searching for meaning in life. The other book that I am interested in possibly reading by this author is The Sea of Tranquility, which I think is an SFF historical fiction mashup. This is also a novel that has multiple storylines, and it is told across, I think, like 200 or 300 years. It follows three perspectives: an 18-year-old who has been exiled and is traveling across the Atlantic on a steamship, a famous writer who is on a book tour, but I think the writer, her home is actually on the moon, like a settlement on the moon. And the third perspective is a detective who is investigating this anomaly in the North American wilderness. It also has a kind of complex and cryptic synopsis that I know I can't do it justice, so I'll just leave it at that. So the question here, which one should I read? Which one of the two? If I was going to just read one more book by Emily St. John Mandel, which of these two books should it be? Next up on the list, which may kind of be a surprise to you, is Ian Reid, who wrote I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Now, if you recall, I recently unhauled I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Though I absolutely loathed the end of I'm Thinking of Ending Things, up until that point, 90% of the book I thought was just fantastic. Even though the end was kind of devastating to me in the sense that it just ruined the book for me, the first 90% of it was so good that it makes me curious about other books that this author has written. And to be honest, the ending of that book is, I feel like it's kind of a one-shot concept. I seriously doubt that this author would ever use this in another book, and quite frankly, if he does, he would be dead to me at that point. Fortunately, he has a couple of books that are very interesting to me. The first one is called Foe, and it is a sci-fi horror novel from what I understand. This is a book about a couple that lives out on a farm. I'm not sure if they're a married couple or siblings or what, but they live on a farm, live a quiet, happy life. And one day some stranger turns up and says that the man has been selected for something and has to leave immediately. And they tell the woman that she won't be alone. And to quote the synopsis, which this is really what made me really want to read this book, they tell her that she won't be left alone, not even for a moment. Henrietta will have company, familiar company. And that's it. That's all it says. So I'm just like, what does that mean? I want to know what this book is about. So I'm very intrigued to pick up that book. But I am equally intrigued to pick up this other book by Ian Reid called We Spread, which I believe comes out this year. I think it comes out in maybe September. This is from what I understand, this is a horror/mystery thriller novel. And it's about a woman who lives alone in an apartment, and she recently lost her partner. I guess her partner died. And she starts having these incidents, and they end up putting her in this long-term care facility, like this situation that, unbeknownst to her, had been set up for her. And at first, she's really happy and making friends and having a good time, but then things start to feel a little off. And I think she maybe starts to question whether what she's experiencing is just kind of a symptom of her aging, or if there is something more at play. So that synopsis also just sucked me right in. I don't know, equally so, I think, for both of these books. I want to read them both right now. However, if I had to prioritize one, which one should I prioritize? Next up, we have William Gibson, who wrote Neuromancer. This is where cyberpunk sci-fi was born. And I really enjoyed this book. It's a little bit dense, a little bit hard to understand and get into it because it has sort of a lot of made up words in it. However, the vibe of this book is unassailably cool, and the concept is amazing. And I want to read more by William Gibson. I mean, he was a pioneer in cyberpunk sci-fi, which is probably my favorite sci-fi subgenre. So I feel like it's kind of a crime that I have not yet picked up another novel by him. So the two novels that I am on the fence about, the first one is called Virtual Light. Virtual Light, from what I understand, is a lot more easy to digest, a little bit more accessible than Neuromancer, and has a really interesting premise. It follows two characters who are on the run. One of them is a cop, and the other one is a woman who, she is a bike messenger turned pickpocket. And she has gotten a hold of these glasses or sunglasses that, I don't know if they're AR or VR, but whenever you look through them, it can reveal things that will change your life and possibly get you killed. That's pretty much a direct quote out of the synopsis. So these two characters are on the run because they're in possession of this, I guess, very powerful object. It's a very powerful technological object. So I think the main reason that I'm really interested in this one is because it sounds really cat and mouse, and I like that type of story, like characters on the run and being chased and hiding and that sort of thing. So I am really curious to pick up that one. And then the second novel by William Gibson that I'm interested in picking up is called Pattern Recognition. It follows a woman who is a market researcher who has been hired to find more information about these video clips that keep showing up on the internet. Apparently people they love them and get really obsessed with them, and they're very sought after. And so this woman is hired to just get more information about it. And as she starts to do this, she ends up seemingly getting into some trouble. Her computer gets hacked, her apartment gets robbed. So apparently there's some sort of danger in finding out more about these clips. Also sounds kind of cat and mouse, really intriguing and thrilling. So I really am curious about that one as well. And then finally, we have Simone St. James, who wrote The Sundown Motel, a book that I absolutely love. I think a big part of the reason that this works so well for me is because the author, she really leaned into the supernatural. It wasn't one of those it was a leaky faucet all along type of deals. She leaned into the supernatural, and it made this book so much fun to read. The other books of hers that I'm interested in, they're the exact same structure that this one had, which is a book that is told in parallel timelines, one from the past and the other in the present, and someone in the present kind of investigating what happened in the past. The first book that I am really interested in, have been interested in reading for a while, is The Broken Girls. The timelines in this book, I think, are 1950 and 2015, maybe? And it is about a boarding school that existed in the 50s, and I think at that point in time there was a group of girls that were close friends. One of them ended up disappearing. And then in the present timeline is about, there's a woman who, her sister disappeared or something like that, was killed, murdered, and I guess her boyfriend was blamed for it, but it was never really, they were never quite sure about it. They're renovating maybe, or going to reopen this boarding school, and this woman in the present starts to investigate what happened in the past. It's very similar, almost identical in structure to the Sundown Motel, but I loved the structure of that. I really, really enjoyed that. So I'm very curious about that one. And then the other novel that I'm really interested in is the Book of Cold Cases. I think this might be her newest novel, although I'm not sure, don't quote me on it. This is also told in the two parallel timelines. One of them, I believe, is set in maybe the 70s, and then the other one, present day. The storyline from the 70s, I think it is about a woman who, she ends up being charged with these murders. There were murders of two different men, though I think she ends up being acquitted of the murders and goes kind of into a reclusive life. And then the character from the present day is a woman who is just obsessed with cold cases. I think she has a forum or something online called the Book of Cold Cases, and she, I guess, becomes interested in these murders that happened in the 70s, and gets an interview with this woman that was acquitted for the murders, and goes to interview her at her house. and weird things happen around the house, like objects move when she's not looking, and she looks out the window and there's a girl standing in the window or something kind of cryptic like that. And it sounds so spooky, like the spooky vibe of that, the way that sounds, I don't know, it's really appealing to me. The Sundown Motel was a pretty creepy book, and I would love to recapture that feeling of reading a book with that kind of like creeped out, that like sort of supernatural creeped out vibe that it gave me. But I've been interested in reading The Broken Girls for a really long time, so I do not know which one I should prioritize. So what do you think? Tell me below, which of these two books do you think should be the next book that I read by Simone St. James? So I think that that's going to be it for me today. Those are 5 authors that I am really hoping you can help me pick out a second book to read by them. Hopefully this has been interesting to you, or I don't know, maybe you have been on the fence about some of these books yourself, and perhaps some of the feedback down in the comments will help you decide which one is right for you. If you enjoyed this video, I hope that you will like it and possibly subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.